1:43 a.m. November 13th, 1942. Iron Bottom Sound, Guadalcanal. Lieutenant Commander Bruce McCandless stands on the bridge of the heavy cruiser USS San Francisco, surrounded by 14 Japanese warships, closing at 20 knots. 2 battleships, 1 light cruiser, 11 destroyers, all bearing down on his position in pitch darkness. The San Francisco's bridge erupts in flame. A 14-inch shell weighing 1,400 pounds crashes through the chart house. Admiral Daniel Callahan dies instantly. Captain Casson Young crumples to the deck. The 4 staff officers surrounding them vanish in the blast. McCandless feels metal tear through his life jacket. The concussion throws him against the bulkhead. His ears ring. Blood runs warm down his ribs. When he opens his eyes, he's alone on the navigation bridge with 1 quartermaster. Everyone else is dead or dying. The ship is making 18 knots in a circular turn with no one controlling her course. 7 American ships are supposed to be following directly behind. The mathematics of death are simple. The San Francisco is a 9,950-ton cruiser designed to fight other cruisers. Her armor, 5 inches at the belt, 3.5 inches on the deck, can stop shells from ships her own size. The Naval War College calculates her life expectancy at 4 to 5 penetrative hits from 14-inch guns. She's already taken 3. The Japanese battleships Hiei and Kirishima each mount 8 14-inch guns in 4 twin turrets. They outweigh her 3 to 1, outgun her 4 to 1, and they're firing at point-blank range, 2,500 yards, so close their shells arrive on flat trajectories, punching through thin superstructure like paper. In naval warfare doctrine, the cruisers don't fight battleships, they run. Survival rate when they don't. Statistically, 0. But Bruce McCandless is about to violate every principle of naval combat, because in the next 22 minutes he's going to do 3 impossible things. First, he's going to take command of a ship as a lieutenant commander, with an admiral's 2-star flag still flying above him, violating the chain of command during combat. Second, he's going to steer a burning, flooding cruiser through the center of the Japanese battle formation while unconscious men bleed out around him, maintaining fire on enemy battleships the entire time. Third, he's going to bring 742 survivors home through 650 miles of enemy-controlled waters, with no compass, no charts, no steering control, and 45 holes in his hull. The advantage he has? He's already survived the impossible once before, exactly 48 days ago. Bruce McCandless was born August 12, 1911, in Washington, D.C., the son of Commodore Byron McCandless. Navy was in his blood, literally. His father commanded destroyers. His grandfather served in the Civil War. His great-grandfather fought Wild Bill Hickok at Rock Creek Station before the family changed their name and moved west. Young Bruce grew up watching warships steam past, their gray hulls cutting through Chesapeake Bay water. At 7 years old, he announced he would attend the Naval Academy. His father smiled. Some families grow corn. The McCandless family grew naval officers. In June 1932, Bruce graduated from Annapolis. He was 20 years old. His classmates included Richard Best, who would bomb carriers at Midway, and Lloyd Mustin, who would revolutionize carrier operations. But Bruce had one quality that set him apart. When things went to hell, his voice got quieter. That trait would save his life. Twice. The first time Bruce McCandless proved he was different was December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor, 7:55 a.m. He's serving as communications officer aboard the USS San Francisco, tied up at the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard for overhaul. Most of the Pacific Fleet burns at anchor across the harbor. Battleship Row is an inferno. Arizona explodes with 1,177 men trapped inside. Oklahoma capsizes, drowning sailors in her hull. The Japanese execute the perfect surprise attack, except the San Francisco isn't surprised. She's in the shipyard. Her crew is at breakfast, not battle stations. Her guns are partially disassembled for maintenance. Her ammunition is locked in magazines below decks. Most officers would panic. McCandless walks to his communication station, puts on his headset, and starts coordinating damage reports from other ships. His voice over the circuit is calm, methodical. He sounds like he's conducting a training exercise, not living through the apocalypse. The San Francisco's crew gets her guns operational in 17 minutes, faster than any other ship in the yard. They shoot down 0 enemy aircraft, but that's not the point. The point is they were ready. While Battleship Row burned, the San Francisco emerged with 1 broken searchlight and 3 minor casualties. What McCandless earned that day, a reputation, the man who doesn't panic. The second test came 10 months later, October 11th, 1942, the Battle of Cape Esperance. The San Francisco is flagship of Admiral Norman Scott, leading 5 cruisers and 8 destroyers in a night ambush off Guadalcanal. Intelligence reports a Japanese convoy approaching, cruisers and destroyers attempting to reinforce their troops and bombard Henderson Field. At 11:30 p.m., in pitch darkness, Scott's force intercepts them. McCandless is on the bridge when the American destroyers, equipped with the new SG radar, detect Japanese ships at 14,000 yards. Scott executes a textbook crossing of the enemy's T, steaming perpendicular across the Japanese column so all American guns can bear, while only the lead Japanese ships can return fire. The San Francisco opens fire at 11:46 p.m., her 9-inch guns lighting up the night. Her 4th salvo hits the Japanese cruiser Ioba, setting her afire. McCandless watches through binoculars as shells rip into the enemy flagship, killing the Japanese admiral on his bridge. The Americans sink 1 cruiser, damage 2 more, and destroy a destroyer, the U.S. Navy's first surface victory since 1898. The San Francisco emerges without a scratch. What McCandless learned that night: American ships could win night battles against the Japanese if they struck first, if they maintained fire discipline, if someone kept their head while shells screamed overhead. He had no idea he'd need that lesson again in exactly 33 days. The third test was November 12th, 1942. 2:10 p.m., the San Francisco is covering transport ships, unloading Marines at Guadalcanal when 21 Japanese torpedo bombers attack. Twin-engine Bettys skimming 10 feet above the water at 170 knots. The Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner maneuvers the transport group brilliantly, turning to parallel the torpedoes, inducing the Japanese to launch too early. American fighters and anti-aircraft fire destroy 20 of the 21 attackers. Not 1 torpedo hits, but 1 burning bomber, its torpedo already dropped, crashes into the San Francisco's after superstructure at 150 degrees relative bearing. The impact is horrific. The twin-engine aircraft smashes through gun mounts, incinerating 3 20mm crews who keep firing until the moment of impact. Aviation gasoline sprays across the deck, turning the aft section into a crematorium. The after-fire control director, the backup system for aiming the main guns, melts into slag. 24 men die. 45 more are wounded, including Executive Officer Commander Mark Crowder, badly burned. Crowder refuses evacuation. He insists on staying aboard, arguing he can advise his replacement even though he's wrapped in bandages and can barely move. His devotion to duty will kill him the next night when a shell bursts in his cabin. What McCandless witnessed that afternoon: the cost of combat. Good men burning, equipment destroyed, and something else: The Japanese were desperate. Suicide attacks meant they were throwing everything at Henderson Field. The real assault was still coming. At 6:30 p.m., the San Francisco and 12 other warships formed into column. The transport ships departed south to safety. Task Group 67.4 stayed behind. Admiral Callahan received 3 intelligence reports: 2 battleships or heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, and 6 destroyers approaching from the northwest at 25 knots. 5 more destroyers approaching from the north, possibly 2 carriers and escorts from the west. The Japanese were converging on Guadalcanal from 3 directions. Their objective: pulverize Henderson Field with 14-inch bombardment, destroy the Marine and Navy aircraft, then land a full infantry division supported by artillery. If they succeeded, Guadalcanal would fall. The first American offensive would end in a death march to match Bataan. At 10 p.m., Task Group 67.4 steamed back through Lengo Channel into Savo Sound, the waters the Marines called Iron Bottom for all the ships resting on the seabed. The night was dark, moonless, low clouds. Lightning flickered in the mountains of Guadalcanal. A light breeze carried the scent of tropical flowers across calm water. In the Japanese sector, the 2 white lights shone near shore, navigation aids for the incoming fleet. McCandless was on the bridge, serving as officer of the deck because the navigator, Commander Ray Arison, was also serving as staff operations officer and couldn't do both jobs. McCandless volunteered for the extra duty. It was the kind of thing he did, quietly taking on responsibility without asking for recognition. That habit saved his life at Cape Esperance. Tonight, it would save his ship. 1:24 a.m. November 13th, 1942. The USS Helena's SG radar paints contacts. 3 groups, 16 ships total, bearing northwest. Distance 13 to 16 miles. Course southeast, speed over 20 knots. The Japanese are racing toward Henderson Field, expecting to find the waters empty except for a few PT boats. They have no idea 13 American warships are about to cross their path. The Admiral Callahan increases speed to 18 knots, turns north to 0 degrees, intending to throw his formation directly across the enemy's T. The destroyer commanders receive the order. Division commanders take charge and attack, followed by commence firing to the cruisers. It's a sound plan, except the San Francisco doesn't have SG radar. She's navigating by reports from other ships, transmitted over scratchy TBS voice radio. The Helena can see what's coming. McCandless, standing in the San Francisco's pilot house, cannot. 1:40 a.m., the leading American destroyer, Cushing, and the leading pair of Japanese destroyers sight each other at 1,200 yards. The Cushing swings hard left to avoid collision. The other 3 American van destroyers maneuver frantically. Torpedoes launch. Gunfire erupts. The destroyer melee begins. McCandless calls down the voice tube to the flag bridge. "The Atlanta's turning left. Shall I follow her?" The Atlanta, an anti-aircraft cruiser ahead of the San Francisco, is trying to avoid the destroyer dogfight. Admiral Callahan's reply, "No, hold your course." Then, seconds later, "Follow the Atlanta." McCandless swings right to clear her stern, then cranks full left rudder, bringing the San Francisco around onto a northwesterly course, paralleling the Atlanta slightly to port. Enemy searchlights snap on, illuminating the Atlanta. She swings back across the San Francisco's bow, firing rapidly to port at what appears to be Japanese destroyers. Then her opening salvos include starshell, bathing the sector in harsh white light. McCandless sees them, the Japanese main body, battleships. Their massive pagoda superstructures unmistakable even in the darkness. They're 3,000 yards away, point-blank range for naval combat. Captain Casson Young, standing beside McCandless, designates targets to the gunnery officer. Take the leading destroyer. Lieutenant Commander William Wilborn, in the main battery director, locks on the San Francisco's 3 8-inch turrets, 9 guns total, trained to starboard. At 1:50 a.m., they fire. The first salvo is short, but nets a hit. The Japanese destroyer catches fire. Ships astern of the San Francisco pile on, raking the burning enemy with more shells. Young orders Wilborn to shift to the second destroyer. Before Wilborn can comply, both Japanese destroyers reverse course and fall back toward their battleships. That maneuver, 2 small ships retreating into the formation, is about to cause a catastrophe, because the Atlanta is now drifting across the San Francisco's line of fire. In the darkness, confusion, and urgency of battle, American shells, 8-inch armor-piercing rounds from 1,200 yards, punch through the Atlanta's light superstructure. Most don't detonate. They're designed to penetrate heavy armor before exploding. Against thin aluminum, they simply drill clean holes. But the impact is devastating. Men die, systems fail. Then a Japanese torpedo hits the Atlanta's engine room, stopping her dead. She drifts out of formation, burning. Admiral Norman Scott, aboard the Atlanta, is killed by Japanese shell fire. Captain Young sees the Atlanta's plight and shouts, "Cease firing," in the stress of the moment. His order goes out over the TBS to the entire task group. Most ships ignore it, because now the battleships are here. Admiral Callahan's voice crackles over the radio. "We want the big ones. Get the big ones first." McCandless, at the con, sees a battleship crossing ahead. He swings left to unmask the after turret. The San Francisco's 8-inch guns train around, but the Japanese battleship's guns are already trained on them. The Haie, 29,300 tons, 8 14-inch guns, 14 6-inch guns, 8 5-inch anti-aircraft guns. She's Admiral Hiroaki Abe's flagship. Her 14-inch turrets rumble around, barrels depressing to almost horizontal. At 2,500 yards, this isn't gunnery, it's a knife fight. The San Francisco fires first. The range is so short, her gun director is set for 2,200 yards. The salvo is short, but scores 1 hit. The Haie's reply is slow, incredibly slow. Her first 2 salvos miss, throwing up vivid green-white pyrotechnics, incendiary shells designed for bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat. Wilborn, the gunnery officer, takes advantage and goes to rapid fire. The San Francisco's turrets are designed to load at 5-degree elevation, but this close range requires only 1 degree. The gun crews are forcing shells into breaches faster than they've ever done. Every flash from the San Francisco's guns illuminates her position for every Japanese ship in the formation. The light cruiser Nagara, 3,000 yards off the starboard quarter, opens fire with 5.5-inch guns. An unidentified ship, probably the second battleship Kirishima, joins in, creating crossfire. Then the Haie's third salvo arrives. 4 14-inch shells, each weighing 1,400 pounds. They crash into the bridge area with devastating effect. One bursts in the chart house, obliterating maps, instruments, and Commander Harrison. The blast throws him through the doorway, across the pilot house, over the port bridge wing, onto a 5-inch gun mount 2 decks below. The gun crew, firing continuously, throws him off and hurls ejected hot shell casings after him. Another shell from port kills everyone on that side of the bridge. A shell from starboard, from the Haie's secondary 6-inch battery, strikes the flag bridge directly below, killing Admiral Callahan and all 4 of his staff officers instantly. 1 hit kills Captain Young, leaving him unconscious. A shell fragment slams into McCandless, punching through his life jacket, embedding in his ribs. The concussion stuns him. His ears scream. Blood soaks his shirt. When his vision clears, he's standing next to Quartermaster 3CE Harry Higdon, the only other person alive in the pilot house. Higdon spins the wheel. Nothing happens. "I have lost steering control," he shouts. McCandless checks the engine telegraph. It's jammed. They've lost engine control too. The San Francisco is making 18 knots in a standard left turn. 7 ships are supposedly following in column. If those ships follow the flagship's circular path, they'll steam in a death spiral until the Japanese destroy them all. What McCandless can't know, is that the Portland, next to stern, has been torpedoed and is circling out of control to starboard with her rudder jammed. The Helena has swung out to avoid the Atlanta. The Juno has been torpedoed. In the rear destroyer unit, the Aaron Ward is badly damaged. The Barton has been torpedoed twice and sunk with 90% of her crew, and the Monson is sinking. Only the Fletcher, last in column, is undamaged. The American formation has ceased to exist. But McCandless doesn't know that. All he knows is that he's senior surviving officer on a flagship in the middle of a battleship duel, and someone has to take command. This is the moment, the 90 seconds that define everything. McCandless has multiple options, all of them wrong. He could abandon the bridge, evacuate topside, regroup in central station below decks where the ship's damage control officer is fighting fires and flooding. Reasonable. Safe. Except the ship would continue her circular turn, possibly colliding with friendly vessels, definitely getting pounded by Japanese battleships until she sinks. He could wait, send runners below to find the executive officer or the next senior officer, and bring them to the bridge to assume command properly. Correct procedure. Except Executive Officer Mark Crowder is already dead, killed in the same blast that wiped out the Admiral and Captain. The next senior officer is Lieutenant Commander Herbert Schonland in Central Station, 3 decks below, coordinating 20 fires throughout the ship. By the time Schonland could reach the bridge and assess the situation, the San Francisco would be at the bottom of Iron Bottom Sound, or McCandless could do something unprecedented. He could assume command of the ship. As a lieutenant commander, with an admiral's 2-star flag still flying above him, with no one giving him authority, in the middle of combat, in the middle of the Japanese fleet. It violates every principle of naval command structure, but it's the only option that doesn't end with everyone dying. McCandless makes the decision in less than 5 seconds. He turns to Higdon. "Get down to the conning tower. Rogers is there. Tell him we've shifted control to him." Quartermaster 3C. Floyd Rogers is alone in the conning tower, directly below the pilot house, the emergency steering station. When Central Station realizes the bridge has been hit, they shift control to the conning tower, the only topside station still functioning. McCandless leans over the voice tube. "Rogers, come to course." He stops, thinks. Where is he? Where are the Japanese? Where is Savo Island? He can't see anything except gun flashes, burning ships, and darkness. He picks a course that should take them between Savo Island and Guadalcanal, into open water, away from the main Japanese formation. If he's wrong, they'll run aground. If he's right, they'll survive, Rogers acknowledges. The San Francisco steadies onto her new course. Now McCandless does 3 things simultaneously, each one impossible, each one essential. First, he cons the ship, without charts, without compass. The gyro repeater has been destroyed. Without steering control in the pilot house, everything is being relayed by voice tube to Rogers in the conning tower below. He's navigating by memory and feel, gauging distance to Guadalcanal by eye, turning away when the dark mass of the island looms too close, turning back when he loses sight of it. Second, he maintains fire. The gunnery officer, Lieutenant Commander Wilborn, can see targets through his director. The ship still has 3 8-inch turrets operational. Turret 2 has been flooded by a damaged control panel. Wilborn picks targets. McCandless maneuvers to unmask guns. The The San Francisco continues firing at the high AI, scoring hits. Third, he tries to notify someone, anyone, that Admiral Callahan is dead and the task group needs a new commander. That last part is complicated. The radio is working, but McCandless doesn't know who's alive in the other ships. He doesn't know which ship is senior. He doesn't even know how many American ships are still afloat. He makes a command decision. First, survive the next 10 minutes, then worry about the chain of command. A Japanese destroyer crosses ahead, close aboard, firing 5-inch and lighter weapons into the San Francisco. So her shots hit the forward part of the bridge just as McCandless returns from a quick search for Captain Young. The destroyer shifts fire to the port 5-inch battery. The San Francisco's port guns return fire in local control under Chief Boatswain's Mate John McCullough. One gun, with its last round, causes a massive explosion on the destroyer's stern, probably depth charges detonating. The destroyer falls away, burning. During this exchange, McCandless steps into a shell hole in the deck, nearly falling through to the level below. He pulls himself out while 5-inch shells explode around him. Below decks, Lieutenant Commander Schonland is performing his own miracle. With power failing, ventilation cut off, and temperatures soaring to 130 degrees in the engineering spaces, he's rotating repair parties through flooded compartments. They plugging 45 holes in the hull with rolled mattresses, fighting fires in 20 separate locations, and keeping the engines running. When a messenger reaches him with news that McCandless is conning from the pilot house and needs acknowledgement of command, Schonland faces his own impossible choice: go topside and assume command as senior surviving officer, or stay below and keep the ship afloat. He chooses to stay. He sends word back, continue conning, I'll keep her afloat. That decision saves the San Francisco, because Schonland knows damage control. McCandless knows ship handling. Together they do the job of 10 men. At 1:58 a.m., another 14-inch shell from the HEI strikes the top of the conning tower 2 feet above McCandless's head. The explosion tears up the pilot house deck, rips the steering pedestal apart, and knocks McCandless unconscious. When he comes to seconds later, maybe a minute, Rogers is shouting up the voice tube that they've lost steering and engine control again. Central Station has pulled all electrical circuits to fight a fire. The gyro repeater is dead. They have no compass, but they still have the sound-powered battle telephone connecting the pilot house to Central Station. McCandless gives orders to engines and rudder by phone, relayed through Central Station. Later, when heat and smoke make Central Station untenable, his quartermasters, Higdon and Rogers, take turns going below to steer manually, while the other stays with McCandless to relay commands. The 5-inch, 1.1-inch, and 20mm batteries have been virtually wiped out by shellfire. The after anti-aircraft director takes a direct hit. The forward repair party dies when a shell bursts in their midst. The Marine detachment of 42 men will earn 33 Purple Hearts, 7 posthumously. Sick bay floods with 3 feet of water and has to be evacuated. Radio Central becomes a makeshift hospital, crowded with wounded, miraculously untouched, though shells hit all around it. Throughout the ship, 86 men are dead or dying. 85 more are wounded, but the engines keep running, the guns keep firing, and McCandless keeps conning. 2:04 a.m. The High-A swings out of sight toward Savo Island. According to Japanese records, she's been hit 85 times. Some hits are 8-inch armor-piercing shells from the San Francisco and Portland that penetrate her side armor, jam her rudder, damage her engines, and wreck her fire control. The others are smaller caliber shells from other cruisers and destroyers that shred her superstructure. She's dying, but she's also escaped. And there's still a second battleship. A brief lull in firing. Japanese searchlights probe to the north, gun flashes. McCandless trains the San Francisco's guns toward the activity, but holds fire. He can't tell if the ships are American or Japanese. Then he sees a dark shape directly ahead, large, between Guadalcanal and Savo Island, 2,500 yards. The Kirishima. She lays several 14-inch salvos down the San Francisco's starboard side, close aboard. Geysers erupt, none hit. McCandless swings left to unmask turret 3. The San Francisco fires back. The shells strike the Kirishima, but cause negligible damage. She's pulling away at high speed, heading northwest. Her salvos are parting shots. The Japanese are retreating. At 1:43 a.m., Admiral Abe had ordered all ships to break off and withdraw. He had excellent reasons. American destroyers inside his screen making torpedo attacks. Bombardment ammunition proving ineffective against warships. Henderson field bombardment impossible, with American cruisers in the way. And most importantly, any ship still in these waters at dawn would be attacked by American aircraft from Henderson Field. The High Eye is already crippled. Abe doesn't know it yet, but she'll be sunk by Navy and Marine dive bombers later today. One destroyer is sinking. Another will be abandoned and sunk by the Portland after daylight. The naval battle of Guadalcanal's first phase is over. Duration, 24 minutes. Most intense ship-to-ship combat in modern naval history. McCandless slows to 10 knots to reduce flooding through waterline holes. About 500 tons of water slosh back and forth on the second deck, reducing stability dangerously. The ship behaves oddly, rolling unpredictably. Some reports from below are exaggerated. Men in shock reporting damage worse than reality. McCandless thinks it might be necessary to beach the ship. He steers east along the Guadalcanal coast, gauging distance by eye, turning away when the dark island mass looks too close, heading back in when he loses sight of it. This continues for over an hour. Rescue parties work through the ship, searching for survivors. Dozens of men lie critically wounded on the decks. Someone keeps calling McCandless, requesting permission to turn on cargo handling lights to facilitate search. McCandless refuses. Turning on lights would be suicide. Any Japanese ship or submarine within miles would see them. The man keeps calling. McCandless never finds out who he was. The San Francisco has taken 45 shell hits. 12 are major caliber, 14-inch from the Hiei, 6-inch from the Nagara, plus numerous machine gun hits and fragment damage. Parts of the ship are a shambles. On the bridges and at open gun mounts, the toll is horrific, but every time a shell hit armor, the projectile broke up, denting the armor slightly, smoking the paint, even the 14-inch shells. The reason: the Japanese loaded special incendiary bombardment ammunition designed to destroy parked aircraft, fuel dumps, and installations on Henderson Field. Each shell's cavity contained dozens of 3-inch pipe segments filled with powdered aluminum and magnesium incendiaries. And to fit them all in, the bursting charge was reduced to somewhere between a 6-inch and 8-inch explosive effect. The shells had sensitive fuses designed to detonate on contact with earth or concrete, which meant they also detonated on contact with half-inch steel plate. Perfect for killing unprotected personnel and starting fires. Terrible for penetrating warship armor. Had the High Eye used armor-piercing shells, the San Francisco's 5-inch belt would have merely ensured good detonation as they passed through. McCandless would be dead. The ship would be at the bottom. Henderson Field would have been pulverized at dawn. Guadalcanal would have fallen. 2:40 a.m. A dark shape overtakes the San Francisco on the starboard side. Distance 2,000 yards. McCandless sees a cruiser, 2 stacks, 5 turrets, all turrets trained on the San Francisco. American or Japanese? She flashes a challenge, the letters of the recognition code. McCandless knows he should reply with the proper response. but the 14-inch shell that knocked him unconscious has driven the codes from his memory. He looks for the chalked codes on the bulkhead. They were there earlier. Now there are only holes and burned paint. In seconds, the cruiser will fire 15 6-inch guns, 4 5-inch guns. At 2,000 yards, the San Francisco won't survive. McCandless makes another snap decision. He orders the lone surviving signalman to send by blinker light. CSOV C-38BT Admiral Callaghan and Captain Young killed ship, badly damaged take charge. CSO is Commander Support Operations, Admiral Callahan's radio call sign. C-38 is the San Francisco's hull number. The message is unambiguous. Only the San Francisco would report her own admiral and captain killed. The cruiser is the Helena. Her captain, Gilbert Hoover, reads the message. Hands poised over firing keys, relax. Hoover has already seen the Atlanta and Portland crippled. Now he knows the San Francisco's condition. He's the senior surviving officer, afloat. He takes command of the task group, radios a rendezvous, and orders all ships to meet him. McCandless swings in astern of the Helena and follows her south. He calls her occasionally by blinker, steering for the answering flash. It's the only navigation he has. At dawn, they're 40 miles southeast of Guadalcanal. The battered task group counts survivors. The San Francisco, Portland, Helena, Juneau, all damaged. 4 destroyers, Sterrett, O'Bannon, Aaron Ward, Fletcher, gone. Destroyers, Cushing, Laffey, Barton, Amundsen. The Atlanta, with Admiral Scott dead aboard, is still afloat near Guadalcanal but doomed. American losses: 2 light cruisers sunk, 4 destroyers sunk, 3 cruisers heavily damaged, 1 destroyer heavily damaged. Japanese losses: 1 battleship crippled and will be sunk by aircraft today. 2 destroyers sunk, 1 battleship lightly damaged. But Henderson Field remains operational. The Japanese troopships turned back. The bombardment never happened. Guadalcanal holds. At 11:10 a.m., a Japanese submarine torpedoes the Juneau. She explodes and sinks in 20 seconds, taking 687 men with her, including all 5 Sullivan brothers. Captain Hoover makes the brutal decision not to stop for survivors. Stopping would expose his crippled force to more submarine attacks. He signals the B-17 patrol overhead to report the position and continues toward Espiritu Santo. 115 men survive the initial explosion. By the time rescue arrives 8 days later, only 10 are still alive. It's the worst single loss of life from one ship sinking in U.S. Navy history. McCandless, following the Helena, watches the Juneau vanish and steers around the debris field. There's nothing he can do. The San Francisco limps south for 3 days, making 12 knots, trailing oil, listing 3 degrees to starboard from flooding. Below decks, repair parties work around the clock, plugging holes, pumping compartments, shoring bulkheads. The wounded lie in passageways. Sick bay is still flooded. Dr. Edward Lowe and his pharmacist's mates perform surgery on mess tables, amputating shattered limbs, treating burns, administering morphine. Some men die despite their efforts. Others survive who shouldn't. Commander Harrison, thrown off the gun mount, is found alive with a broken arm, broken ribs, and concussion. He'll recover. Executive Officer Crowder, who refused evacuation after the kamikaze attack, is found dead in his cabin, killed by the same shell that destroyed the flag bridge. On November 16th, the San Francisco reaches Espiritu Santo. She's patched sufficiently for the long journey to Pearl Harbor, 1,800 miles of open ocean. She makes the transit at 15 knots, escorted by destroyers arriving November 28th. The crew works frantically to make her presentable. There will be a ceremony. On December 12, 1942, exactly 1 month after the battle, Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations and Commander-in-Chief U.S. Fleet, comes aboard. The San Francisco is still scarred. She's still bloodstained, but her crew is assembled on deck. King presents Lieutenant Commander Bruce McCandless the Medal of Honor. The citation reads that he promptly assumed command of the ship and ordered her course and gunfire against an overwhelmingly powerful force. And through his brilliant seamanship and great courage, the USS San Francisco was brought back to port, saved to fight again in the service of her country. Lieutenant Commander Herbert Schonland receives the Medal of Honor for keeping the ship afloat. Boatswain's Mate First Class. Reinhard Kepler receives the Medal of Honor posthumously for leading repair parties while mortally wounded. Captain Casson Young receives the Medal of Honor posthumously, his second. He'd already earned one at Pearl Harbor. Admiral Daniel Callahan receives the Medal of Honor posthumously. 5 medals of honor from one ship in one battle. It's unprecedented. What's more unprecedented, McCandless's citation carefully avoids mentioning that he assumed command without orders while an admiral's flag still flew overhead. The Navy doesn't want to set that precedent, but they know what he did. Everyone knows what he did. July 29, 1944. McCandless takes command of the newly commissioned destroyer USS Gregory DD-802. He's now a full commander. The Gregory is a Fletcher-class destroyer, 2,050 tons, 5 5-inch guns, 10 torpedo tubes, 35 knots. She's everything a destroyer should be: fast, lethal, expendable. They deploy to the Pacific for the final island-hopping campaign toward Japan. By spring 1945, the war is entering its most savage phase. Japan is losing, everyone knows it, which makes the Japanese more desperate, more willing to die taking Americans with them. The weapon, kamikazes, suicide pilots crashing bomb-laden aircraft into ships. Destroyers on picket duty ahead of the fleet are primary targets. April 8, 1945. The Battle of Okinawa. The Gregory is on radar picket station, the most dangerous assignment in the fleet. At 1420 hours, radar picks up bogies inbound, many bogies. They're 30 miles out, closing fast. McCandless sounds general quarters. Gun crews man their stations. The new 40mm and 20mm mounts, installed specifically for anti-aircraft defense, train skyward. The first kamikaze appears at 1435. A Zero fighter, engine screaming, diving from 5,000 feet. The Gregory's guns open fire. Tracers stream upward. The Zero staggers, hit, but keeps coming. It crashes into the forward deckhouse at the waterline, exploding. Gasoline and bomb fragments shower the deck. Fires erupt. Before damage control can respond, a second Zero dives on the port quarter. More gunfire. This one hits the after deckhouse, blowing a hole in the hull at the waterline. The Gregory starts flooding aft. 2 minutes later, a third kamikaze crashes amidships, destroying the forward engine room. The ship loses power. Dead in the water, fires burning, flooding in 3 compartments. Then a fourth kamikaze. This one McCandless sees clearly. A Val dive bomber, its fixed landing gear hanging down, diving at 60 degrees. Every gun still operational fires. The Val shudders, pieces flying off, but the pilot holds course. It hits the port side near the forward stack, blowing a 15-foot hole in the hull. The Gregory lists 8 degrees to port. She's dying, but McCandless has been here before. He's commanded a sinking ship. He knows the drill. Damage control parties activate. Portable pumps fight flooding. Firefighters pour foam on gasoline fires. The engineering crew bypasses the destroyed forward engine room, gets the after engine online, restores power. In 40 minutes, the Gregory is underway at 5 knots. In 2 hours, she's making 15 knots. In 6 hours, she's heading for Karama-Reto anchorage under her own power. Casualties: 10 killed, 29 wounded. Ship damage: severe but repairable. 4 kamikaze hits in 8 minutes. Most ships would have sunk. The Gregory survives because her captain doesn't panic. His voice over the intercom during the attack is calm, methodical, almost conversational. The same voice he used at Pearl Harbor, the same voice he used at Guadalcanal. For this action, McCandless receives the Silver Star for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity. The pattern is established. This isn't luck, it's character. September 1st, 1952, Captain Bruce McCandless retires from the United States Navy with a terminal promotion to Rear Admiral. He's 41 years old. He could continue. Flag officers usually serve until mandatory retirement at age 60, but McCandless has been at war for most of his adult life. Pearl Harbor, Guadalcanal, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, the Gilbert and Marshall Islands, the Aleutians. He's earned the Medal of Honor, the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, and 17 battle stars. He's done enough. He returns to Washington, D.C., where he was born, and takes a quiet job in civil service. No lecture circuit, no book deals, no memorializing. He simply goes back to being a civilian. His wife, Sue, our daughter of Captain Willis Bradley USN, had waited through 20 years of deployments. Now she has him home. They have 4 children, 2 sons, 2 daughters. One son, Bruce McCandless II, attends the Naval Academy, class of 1958. The younger Bruce becomes a naval aviator, then an astronaut. On February 7, 1984, he performs the first untethered spacewalk, floating 320 feet from Space Shuttle Challenger, wearing a jet-propelled backpack. The photo of Bruce McCandless II alone against the blackness of space becomes one of NASA's most iconic images. His father watches on television, age 72, proud but quiet. Some families grow corn. The McCandless family grows heroes. January 24, 1968. Rear Admiral Bruce McCandless dies in Washington, D.C. from complications of heart disease. He's 56 years old, young for a flag officer. The years of stress, now the wounds, the weight of command, all took their toll. He's buried at the United States Naval Academy Cemetery in Annapolis, Maryland. Section 20, Grave 1021. His headstone lists his rank, his service, his Medal of Honor. It doesn't mention the 24 minutes on November 13, 1942, when he commanded a burning cruiser through the center of a battleship formation and saved Henderson Field. It doesn't mention that he violated the chain of command to do it. It doesn't mention that 742 men came home because he refused to abandon his post. Headstones never have enough room. The USS McCandless, DE-1084, later reclassified FF-1084, a Knox-class frigate, is commissioned on March 18, 1972. She's named in honor of both Rear Admiral Bruce McCandless and his father, Commodore Byron McCandless. The frigate serves 22 years, decommissioned in 1994. At the U.S. Naval Academy, McCandless Way is named in his honor. The Colorado State Veterans Nursing Home in Florence, Colorado, where his family moved after the Wild Bill Hickok incident, is named the Admiral Bruce McCandless State Veterans Nursing Home. But most Americans don't know his name. The battle he saved is overshadowed by Midway, by Iwo Jima, by D-Day. The Medal of Honor citation is buried in archives. The San Francisco's battle-scarred bridge is preserved at Land's End in San Francisco, a memorial to the ship. But few visitors know the story of the communications officer who took command and brought her home. There are 2 ways to tell this story. The first version, a communications officer heroically assumes command after his superiors are killed, saves his ship, and wins a medal. Inspiring, patriotic, safe. The second version, a lieutenant commander makes an illegal command decision in the middle of combat, violates naval protocol by assuming authority he doesn't have, succeeds by pure willpower and skill, and the Navy awards him the Medal of Honor while carefully omitting the part where he broke the rules. Both versions are true. Both are remarkable. But here's what matters. McCandless didn't care about the rules. He cared about getting 742 men home alive. The standard response when you lose your commanding officers is to wait for the chain of command to reassert itself. Find the next senior officer, bring them to the bridge, transfer command properly, follow procedure. It's drilled into every naval officer at Annapolis. But procedure takes time. The San Francisco didn't have time. She had minutes before the next 14-inch salvo turned her into a floating coffin. McCandless looked at the situation and made a calculation. Better to be court-martialed for insubordination than let everyone die while waiting for orders. The decision reveals something fundamental about leadership. Real leadership isn't following the manual. It's knowing when to throw the manual away. Consider a parallel situation. April 19, 1942. Doolittle raid on Tokyo. When Army Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle launched B-25 bombers from the carrier USS Hornet 650 miles from Japan, instead of the planned 400 miles, he made an illegal command decision. Navy doctrine said Army bombers couldn't launch from that distance with enough fuel to reach China. Doolittle did the math differently, decided the risk was acceptable, and launched. All 16 aircraft successfully bombed Tokyo. Doolittle received the Medal of Honor. Nobody mentioned that he violated Navy protocol by overruling carrier doctrine. Same pattern. Success forgives sins. Except McCandless's situation was worse. He wasn't planning a raid. He was commanding a flagship while an admiral's flag flew overhead, while the admiral's body was still warm on the deck below. That's not just breaking protocol, it's mutiny, technically. The Navy could have court-martialed him. They chose not to, because McCandless did what the situation required, not what regulations permitted. And that decision, made in 5 seconds under fire, saved Henderson Field, saved Guadalcanal, saved the Pacific Campaign. Without McCandless keeping the San Francisco in the fight for 22 more minutes, the Helena and Portland would have been overwhelmed. Without American cruiser fire shredding the High-Eye's superstructure and jamming her rudder, she would have escaped. Without the High-Eye crippled and sunk the next morning, Admiral Abe would have returned the following night with both battleships and completed the bombardment. Henderson Field would have been destroyed. Marine and Navy aircraft would have burned on the ground. The Japanese transports would have landed a full infantry division with artillery. Guadalcanal would have fallen by Christmas 1942. The strategic implications are staggering. Losing Guadalcanal would have extended the war in the Pacific by months, possibly years. The death toll from prolonged island warfare would have climbed into the hundreds of thousands. But McCandless wasn't thinking about grand strategy when he took command. He was thinking, someone has to steer this ship. Someone has to keep the guns firing. Someone has to get us out of here. That's the essence of the story. Not heroism in the Hollywood sense, dramatic speeches, theatrical gestures. Heroism in its purest form, seeing what needs to be done and doing it, regardless of rules, regardless of consequences. When things go to hell, the people who survive aren't the ones who follow orders. They're the ones who make the orders that should have been given. McCandless spent the rest of his life doing the same thing, commanding the Gregory through 4 kamikaze hits, retiring quietly instead of capitalizing on fame, raising a family, watching his son float in space, the culmination of 5 generations of service. He never wrote a memoir, never gave interviews about Guadalcanal. When people asked about the Medal of Honor, he said it belonged to everyone aboard the San Francisco that night. Classic deflection, but the Medal of Honor citation is specific. He assumed command. He ordered course and gunfire. He brought the ship home. No one else did those things. He did. Some things you never stop being: a communications officer who doesn't panic, a lieutenant commander who takes command when commanders are dead, a captain who survives 4 kamikaze hits through sheer competence, an admiral who retires without fanfare, a father who teaches his son that service matters more than recognition. Bruce McCandless was all of those things, but mostly he was the man who looked at an impossible situation and said, "Someone has to steer this ship." Then did it, for 22 minutes, through the center of hell, with a 14-inch shell fragment lodged in his ribs. That's not the story of a battle. It's the story of a choice. The choice between dying properly and surviving improperly. McCandless chose survival, and 742 men came home because of it. Some stories don't fit on headstones.